In the news this week, setting the agenda for Australia Day, Pauline Hanson to present a speech to Western Australia, a WAMA News exclusive. Also tonight, Mount McGowan's backflip caused a stir, so when will we reopen again? An exclusive Q&A with Dr Andrew Miller on what's next for WA.
A rail union boss goes for the bush as regional towns continue their outcry for the return of tier-free rail. And Dr Mark Duncan-Smith's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loon and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. WAMA News can exclusively reveal tonight that One Nation leader Pauline Hanson will present a live speech via a video link to her WA supporters on Australia Day, as COVID continues to overshadow the nation's birthday. In her only interview on this matter, Ms Hanson chose to speak to WAMA News. She joined me earlier. Pauline Hanson, thanks for joining us. First, your reaction to the McGowan government's decision to keep WA's borders. What's your take on it?
I think it's pretty disgusting what he's doing. You know, Western Australia is part of Australia as a whole. I understand him wanting to keep people safe, but you can't lock people away from their loved ones, from their families, needing to, for business reasons. You know, we have to learn to live with the Omicron. We have to learn to live with COVID, and it's going to have an impact on the economy in Western Australia. I think it's become political leading into a federal election, and I think what he's doing is going to impact on many, many people, and not in a good way, but in a bad way.
But many West Australians felt quite comfortable with the idea that the borders, that there's a softer, more compassionate border, so people can still come in, can still reunite. What's the problem with that?
They can't come in, they can't reunite. He's made it, they have to have the booster shot now. They have to have a test to show that they don't carry the virus, and also they have to do 2 weeks lockdown. That is absolutely ridiculous. If you're worried about people bringing in the virus, just do a test. Having the vaccine these days does not say that you don't carry the virus. Actually, you do carry the virus and you're asymptomatic, so you can pass it far more greater than what people who are unvaccinated. So it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to me. These premiers and these health officials have bumbled their way through this. They have changed their minds time and time again. The general public don't know what they're doing. People losing their jobs, the impact it's having on businesses, and the business community. They're getting up in arms about it because they're fed up with it.
So your speech on Australia Day, without giving away too much, because this is an event to your supporters in WA, are you able to tell me what is it about and what will your key message will be?
On Australia Day?
Yes.
It's about proud to be an Australian. You know, I even have a lot of acknowledgement and respect for those people that have migrated to Australia to make this country your home. It would be very difficult for me to leave Australia, and I'm very fortunate to be born into a beautiful country that I have, with democracy and so far freedom of speech to an extent, and that we're losing that. But my message is to welcome everyone. I think it's a very special day to unite as Australians, that those people that choose to take their citizenship on that day, welcome and to be an Australian. I think it's a day that we must all unite, accept and acknowledge each other and respect our country and what it has given us and what the future may hold for us as well.
To a certain extent, this country, you know, has a lot of issues, and especially on Australia Day, there's always been celebration and always been calls for change to date. Do you believe the date should be changed?
No, I don't. The majority of Australians were just polled on this. The majority want Australia Day to stay the day that it is. We have those people who want to disrupt it for their own reasons, you know, and we've just got to move on from that. We hear it every year, the same thing, the same people. Get over it, move on, you know, acknowledge and accept who we are as a nation. I think we've got more important things to you know, fight for and to worry about, rather than what day we're going to celebrate Australia Day. And I'll tell you what, you move the day, I don't think it'd make a difference to anyone, because the whole fact is it's about what we're actually celebrating. And when we became the specifics of Australia Day, no matter what day you choose, they'll always be disgruntled. I think they just want to get rid of it altogether.
Changing the date for some people is acknowledging that there's a bit of a problem in this country when it comes to Indigenous issues and so on. You know, isn't that culturally good?
Changing the date isn't going to change their views and opinions about it. They still have this attitude that they don't want the whites. The whites took the land. You know, it was invaded. We've had many countries around the world where the Vikings, the Romans into England. We've had other countries been invaded. Germany invaded many countries. You know, history has shown this for a period of time. What will change? You know, nothing's going to change the past. And changing the date isn't going to change the history. If you think you can just wipe history, if you think you can get rid of these people that have come from an English background or any other background, it's not going to happen. So it's about get over it, and it's about working together to acknowledge that whether you're born here, whether you migrated here, to make Australia a home, we're all Australians. And we have to accept that. Changing the date isn't going to change their attitude.
So my understanding is that you're going to be staying in Queensland, you won't be coming over to Western Australia.
I'm sorry to say yes, I won't be able to make it over to Western Australia before the election. The COVID, the border closures, it's just impossible to actually travel anywhere, which is a real shame. I would have liked to have actually gone over. I am the president of the party, I am the leader of the party, and I fully support my candidates over there. And I believe that we have an excellent chance of picking up a Senate seat in Western Australia, and I would have liked to have actually gone over to help our Senate candidate.
Pauline, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Ivan.
Here to react is Suresh Rajan. He is the leading multicultural leader here in Western Australia. He is also very knowledgeable in Aboriginal issues. Suresh, what do you think?
I was surprised at a couple of levels when looking at her comments and listening to her comments. Firstly, in all of the commentary, she actually talked only about migrants coming here. She did not acknowledge the First Nations people until after that, when you asked her the question. So there was no response there in relation to issues of First Nations and all of those issues that First Nations people have talked to us about over years, about it being Invasion Day, etc. So that was surprising. And then when she went on to talk about the First Nations people, everything she talked about was complete derision. It was about the fact that these people could not get on with it and move on, etc. Hey, look, we do still commemorate Anzac Day. What's the difference? You know, the reality is that it is an invasion day. It is something of concern to people who've had their lands taken away from them, and they have every right to protest the fact that the coming of the white man was not a good event for them, and it happened to be on that day that they regard that their nation was invaded, and quite rightly they choose not to celebrate.
WA's hard border is here to stay, bringing relief for many whilst leaving others devastated and some industries facing financial ruins.
Dr. Andrew Miller joined us earlier for an exclusive Q&A on what's next for us.
Dr. Miller, thanks very much for joining us this week. The border backflip is dramatic but not unexpected. What do you make of this?
Well, we've been expecting some modification to the open border since it became apparent in late December how serious Omicron was going to be and how quickly it was going to spread. Because the important principle to remember is the amount of destruction that any particular variant causes is not just how severe it is, it's also how rapidly it spreads and how hard it hits. So whilst a wave on the beach in itself is a normal occurrence, if you get a massive wave all at once, then you get a real problem. And that's what Omicron is. And I think that meant that we should have rejigged the national plan, the one that was talked about for Delta that came with all the Doherty modelling that apparently we were all opening up on. And the trouble was Omicron crashed the party. We should have changed the plan as a whole nation then. And instead of WA being the standout everywhere, should have been more cautious for a while until we got more third doses in, because it's very clear now particularly if we look at data coming out of places like Switzerland, the deaths are dramatically reduced in the group that has had their booster dose.
If WA do succeed in the next few months, will the premiers in the eastern states be judged?
Well, I think there's a lot of nervous premiers around the country now because all of a sudden there is a control group to be compared to. And if by delaying a bit longer until we get those third doses up, until we get our primary children vaccinated, so this isn't spreading the way it is in the schools over east, and if we manage to avoid a lot of deaths and a lot of hospitalisation that we're seeing over there at the moment, sadly 46 deaths in New South Wales in one day. If we can avoid that, then that's going to make the other premiers very, very nervous, and the other populations, I think, will rightly want to know, well, why did we have to go down this path when Western Australia managed to avoid it?
So when should we reopen the borders?
Well, I think that it's correct to not set a date yet. I think he's quite right to say, well, let's see how it peaks and what happens on the downhill run of the slope of cases in the east. And if we can flatten that curve here, then that will have been a good thing. I think it's a very good idea to say to people that those third doses are absolutely essential. We've got to get those in now. And it would be a very good idea to say to the Commonwealth, if you want us to open up, you all seem to be very desperate to have Western Australia open up. Get us those paediatric vaccines. Get the school kids vaccines over here because they're just dribbling in at the moment. GPs are struggling to get them to give to children, although parents want to do it. So I think we'll work on those things and then revisit it. It's very reasonable in a dynamic situation to change your plan. That's what good leaders do. And I think our Premier's been a good leader by doing this.
Dr. Andrew Miller, thank you very much for your time.
Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Be a unified Australia. That's the message from the Australian Arab Association as it gets set to celebrate a diverse WA community on Australia Day. The association's family-friendly event on January 26 will encourage inclusion, acceptance and respect in WA, promoting life in the lucky country. Nelson Liu reports.
Australia has given Salim a life that he could not have dreamed of.
It's a chance of a new life, a new opportunity.
From war-torn Lebanon, the Australian Arab Association founder saw a fresh start in Western Australia and a peaceful life for his family.
It was good goal to come to Australia.
Salim is thankful for the chance to settle in WA and become a citizen.
That's where you really need to become an Australian to give back to this country.
And he wants others who've made WA home to join him, to unite and celebrate diversity on Australia Day. His association is holding its second family-friendly barbecue encouraging inclusion on January 26, with multicultural performances and activities, topped with a traditional Aussie sausage sizzle.
It's going to be absolutely beautiful day.
The event is a chance to respect, reflect and celebrate as one. And Salim says,
I think everyone should come along and celebrate with us.
Nelson Liu,
We'll see you there.
WAMN News.
A rail union boss visited the regional town of Croydon to inspect the impact of stranded grain in the area, labelling it as a disaster in the making, with local businesses backed the return of Tier 3 railway to reduce roll tolls. Rail, Tram and Bus Union WA Secretary Craig McKinley toured the region, and WAMN News was the only media invited to the trip. Croydon is a small town with a big story to tell. The grain stranded in the region is a result of a once-in-a-lifetime harvest boom. But with the Tier 3 rail shut down, forcing the products to be placed on trucks, the farmers are losing out.
I'd like to know why we can't fix our rail system and get our trains operating like they used to pre-2012.
And I think this is going to become the new norm, to be honest. The quantities that have grown this year, in 10 years' time, I'm sure it'll be beaten 2 or 3 times between here and then.
Rail, Tram and Bus Union WA boss Craig McKinley visited the area this week and talked to locals who want their Tier 3 rail back.
It's sitting on a railway line. It's got a fast loader for the rail system. The rail system has been closed since 2013, and it's all what we see behind me has to go by truck. So it's going to cost about 450 litres of fuel per trip to Perth and back. It's not a very good green option.
With more than 200,000 tonnes of grain stuck at a shed and only 19 trucks ferry around 50 to 60 tonnes per day, the trucks have added incredible pressure on our roads. Volunteer ambulance medics also expressed concerns.
We have to transport patients for sometimes 2-3 hours over pretty rough roads, and if you've got a spinal patient, you just need to make sure that they're well cared for, and we can't travel at high speed on some of these roads. We have to be very, very slow. Well, it's going to take trucks off the road, and eventually that's going to lead to more tourists coming out through our local roads, because they're not having to worry about the poor quality of the roads in the wheat belt.
I'd also like to see us be able to go to Perth on the train.
While the trip highlighted issues that isn't new to regional residents, there are hopes that a Tier 3 rail business case will stand up with its own merit.
Grain has continued to flow from those areas in increasing amounts, and I believe that there is time to reassess the best way to get grain to port.
That is gold sitting behind me, but it can only be gold when it makes its way to the Middle East and so forth, not sitting behind me.
A 29-year-old man has been arrested after an improvised explosive device was detonated in Leederville this week. Shrapnel and debris spread for 10 metres after the bomb exploded between two restaurants on Newcastle Street at around 1:30 p.m. on Thursday. Police said the bomb appears to be homemade, with the makeshift device ignited. At around 10:20 p.m. on the same day, police were tipped off at a location near Wellington and King Street after another homemade explosive device, similar to the Leederville device, was located. A man from Queen's Park has been arrested after officers executed a search warrant, and he is currently assisting police investigation.
The opposition has warned the state government there are no excuses for WA's recent power outages, as metro and regional homes are left without power during 40-degree days this week. Over 6,000 homes experienced power losses on Wednesday as the mercury soared, including Bunbury with 4,000 outages. It comes as a power outage inquiry promised by Energy Minister Bill Johnston has yet to begin. Shadow Energy Minister Dr. David Honey says the outages are unsurprising but inexcusable.
Under this, I think you'd have to say now, incompetent Energy Minister who's simply not doing his job, and as I say, he's absent. All those customers are affected. Where is he? Where's this inquiry?
Community access is improving for specially abled people, with all-terrain wheelchairs set to be introduced to more locations across WA. 12 organisations will be receiving the purpose-built wheelchairs for public use in outdoor environments, funded with $100,000 in state government grants. Disability Services Minister Don Punch says the wheelchairs will be an asset to building more inclusive communities.
I used to hold walls to walk, but getting in salt water, soon after salt water, I walk straight as a die. So it just does amazing things, I know with my body it just does amazing things. And to be able to just float around and just enjoy it.
Now some personal news to share with you. I got my third booster shot this week after becoming eligible. As the Omicron variant continues to spread, it's more important than ever to protect yourself and others in the community by making a booking as soon as possible. I would like to use this opportunity to encourage everyone to get their boosters so we can protect ourselves and our loved ones against Omicron and reduce burden of our public health system.
So how was your booster, Ivan?
I'm feeling fine. When are you getting yours?
I'm getting mine next week.
Looking forward to it.
I'll keep you updated.
Hey, thanks, Melly. And now, here's AMA WA President Dr. Mark Duncan-Smith with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Thanks for your attention. It's been a big week in news this week, with the Premier delaying the border opening from February the 5th. On the Monday, I gave some figures which were based on modelling from a professor of applied mathematics in South Australia, population corrected for WA. I did that because we currently have a COVID outbreak in WA that was already evident last Monday. And in fact, last Monday, I called for restrictions because of that outbreak. Then the Premier made the announcement on Thursday. And then on Friday, again, at the press conference, in response to the announcement, I again made a call for restrictions in WA to get the current COVID outbreak under control. Now, when I say under control, it is obvious and evident from everywhere else in the world that the genie is out of the bottle and WA has Omicron. And that's what I said last week. So essentially, if restrictions are a good idea next week, then they were an even better idea last week. We're up to 24 cases today. In 3 days' time, it will be 50. 3 days after that, it will be 100. So again, I repeat my request for the state government to consider low-level restrictions, not a lockdown, low-level restrictions, that the modelling for Omicron that they should already have, but I don't think they do, that they can apply that modelling to work out what restrictions are needed. Now, assuming that we actually make it past February the 5th or whatever date in the future that might be set, and if we don't introduce some restrictions, we won't, well, then this business about what data we're going to open up and everything like that is going to become totally irrelevant, because the current Omicron outbreak, which is already doubling every 3 days in our society without adequate restrictions, will overtake any of those dates very quickly. Now, on the assumption they do introduce restrictions, we get it under control, then what are we going to do with that extra time the so-called delay has given us? Well, we need to get as many healthcare professionals into WA as possible, streamline the process because there are some reports of having trouble. We need to get the medical system better organised so that it has streamlined policies, strategies, lines of communication, so that we can maximise the effectiveness of the resources that we have available to ourselves. We need to maximise our vaccination, get the children vaccinated, and the government needs to take positive steps to increase. We also need to address the lower vaccination rate in the Aboriginal, rural and remote areas and double our efforts in those areas to increase those percentages. We also very desperately need to improve schools. All schools should have hybrid learning available from the very beginning of term. This isn't just as an option, it's also because eventually we're going to get kids positive in school classes. Those kids are going to have to go home. Close contacts will have to go home. People are sick will have to be schooled from home. So it has to be available anyway. So we might as well do it from the beginning. Bottom line, WA is COVID's here. COVID's doubling every 3 days. Whilst there's inadequate restrictions, that's going to continue. And if we don't introduce restrictions, unfortunately, we'll end up in a place where that South Australian modelling has shown us we'll go to, and that's not where we want to be. Thanks for your attention. Take care.
That's Dr. Mark Duncan-Smith. Here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. Today on 6 News, New South Wales and Victoria unveil their back-to-school plans. New Zealand set to introduce new COVID restrictions from midnight, and outrage continues to grow from some after WA's border reopening was suspended indefinitely. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or head to our website, 6newsau.com. Congrats to Melly on her first night in the anchor chair as well. For now, though, guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. Before we go, tonight marks a new chapter on WMN News. Danielle, Cassandra, Taylor, Sarah, these are the names of WMN's previous anchors, and I'm honoured to be able to follow in the footsteps of these strong women and continue this tradition starting tonight. Growing up in regional Australia, I am passionate about the stories that make us who we are and that shape our nation. In my new role as an anchor, I hope to strengthen independent local journalism, which is more important now than ever before. I look forward to your company for many more Sunday evenings to come. Thanks for the opportunity, Ivan.
It's an honour, Melly, and congratulations to you. We have more stories on our website, wamnews.com.au. Until next Sunday evening, from Melly and myself, wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.